Yesterday, we brought you the story of an official NHS website which was peddling critical race theory and singling out employees for the sin of white privilege. Today, another example of how taxpayers' cash is being used to fund an aspect of identity politics around which there is no abiding consensus. This one comes from the NHS in the Midlands and its online resource, which presents highly contested questions around transgenderism as settled fact. And it does so, as I say, at your expense. Let's turn to Andrew Doyle, who isn't in the studio today. You've taken to your bed, Andrew, so we appreciate you getting up with COVID. Am I allowed to say that?
Of course, yeah.
We are, and that's what. But just to explain to the viewer, that's why you're not here.
Oh yes, I mean it's good that people know I have a legitimate reason not to be there, and it is indeed the COVID. Yeah,
the dreadful COVID. We've got another story of the NHS seemingly spending the taxpayers' hard-earned pounds promoting what is a contested ideology. Did I overdo my introduction, or is it a fair assessment, do you think?
No, that's exactly right. And it just goes to show the extent to which our major institutions have been captured by this ideology. And it's all connected. I mean, you were speaking about the influence of critical race theory yesterday, but the influence of gender identity ideology, which tends to come from the similar intersectional activists, it is all connected. And what's quite incredible about it is that it has become predominant within, let's say, the NHS, even though, as you pointed out, it is highly contested. And the notion of gender identity ideology is held by a very small minority of the country. It's just a very small group of very powerful people who have managed to infiltrate, largely with the help of Stonewall, but they've managed to infiltrate our major institutions. And people don't really understand what it means. And that it's really important to be clear about this. When we're talking about gender identity ideology, we're talking about the concept that we all have an innate gender identity, a kind of a soul that has a particular gender. It is a kind of quasi-religious idea. And that this does not match necessarily our biology, our whether we are male or female. We're not talking about gender dysphoria, what we used to call transsexualism. We're not talking about people who feel, for whatever reason, they are completely uncomfortable within their own body and that they have to, as a result, present as the other sex, or they have to undertake medical surgery in order to transition. Everyone's got sympathy with those people. We all believe in equal rights for those people. We're talking about an ideology relating to this notion of gender identity that most people, and in fact, most LGBT people, do not believe in. And it's absolutely bizarre. A number of these... I saw you tweet earlier about one of the leaflets that has gone out from an NHS trust. Various NHS trusts are putting this stuff out. I can just reference one from LGBT Stoke, which is an NHS sexual health prevention service. They put out a leaflet, a gender identity guide for young people specifically, which discusses how sex is assigned at birth. That's the phrase they use. I've seen NHS internal memos talking about how sex is assigned at birth. Now, sex is not assigned at birth. That is factually incorrect. Sex is observed and recorded at birth. It's often observed and recorded before birth. And so by making the statement that you think sex is assigned, as though the doctor just flips a coin or something like that, you're actually pronouncing fealty to this idea of gender identity ideology, a thing which many trans people think is ridiculous. Trans people will tell you biological sex is a reality and it has to be, otherwise there's no such thing as trans. So it's just very odd to see that this is being propagated with taxpayers' money by the NHS, and you would have thought that medical experts are fully aware that sex is a biological reality that is certainly not assigned.
I'm struggling because you're not here sitting in this chair next to me, Andrew, to catch your eye, to sort of say, let me get a word in edgeways. It's difficult when you...
Sorry, OK.
No, it's fine.
I do tend to go on about
as usual, you're talking very good sense. I'm looking at the leaflet you mentioned from the NHS in Stoke, and I wonder sometimes whether it's part of the tone that's struck, Andrew. I mean, it's so declamatory and sort of hectoring. Do let someone use their preferred changing rooms and toilet facilities. Well, if somebody comes in, they're identifying as a man, you're a woman who would feel much more comfortable. I mean, we're getting into really tendentious territory, but even things like this, don't gossip with colleagues about someone's sexuality or gender identity. This is the state, the National Health Service, funded by the taxpayer, telling staff they can't gossip, or at least what they should be gossiping about.
And that's because so much of this movement and the ideologues who peddle it are really a new kind of Puritans, and they have a mode of behaviour that they would like to see imposed on everyone else. And you've said it exactly right. They have a hectoring quality. The way in which they express themselves suggests there is no argument here. There is no room for debate. It'll be very interesting to see if anyone who's reading this material comes back and says, well, hold on a minute, I don't believe in gender identity ideology. Can we have that discussion? Can members of staff have that discussion? Because I can promise you the vast majority of NHS staff won't agree with this stuff. But it's more than just hectoring. I mean, you're right to point it out, but it's also actually kind of misrepresenting the law. I mean, in this particular document from LGBT Stoke, there's a section on the Equality Act 2010, and it says that the Equality Act means, quote, your preferred name and pronouns should be used and respected, strongly implying that's a legal requirement. It absolutely is not. It also says it's illegal for people to call you offensive names or words. Well, if that's the case, then I better get on the phone to the police, because I get that every day on Twitter, and all of those people are going to do jail time, frankly.
Andrew, on that note, we've got to leave it, but get well soon.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.